And I just remember that morning being so surreal, like out of body experience. I called 911. I ran outside. That was my instinct, just like get help. And so it was school. Everyone was walking to school in the neighborhood. My neighbor came. She's a nurse, started CPR. And the whole time I'm just thinking, I believe in miracles.
This episode is brought to you by Cozy Earth. Did you know that cooler sleeping conditions may boost serotonin levels, contributing to improved mood and reduce symptoms of depression? I am definitely a person that likes to sleep with it cooler, and I live in southern Utah. It gets to be like 115 degrees here, and so sleeping cool at night is definitely a priority for me. So when I received a set of Cozy Earth sheets, it was a game changer for me. I have loved them so much. They keep me cool at night. They're super soft. I have never experienced such a great night's sleep as I have with these silky, soft sheets. They are amazing. And it's a risk-free purchase. You have a 100-night sleep trial, so you can try them during the hottest nights of the year. If you're not in love, you can return them hassle-free, but trust me, you're going to want to keep them. They're amazing. Also, you can go to cozyearth.com and use code COMEBACK for 40% off. That is such a good deal. I'm about to go load up my cart right now. They are the best-selling temperature regulating sheets, and there's a lot more. You'll feel the difference the very first night. Sleep cooler, lounge lighter, and stay cozy. Hey guys, our event is right around the corner. It is September 5th and 6th at the Utah Valley Convention Center in Provo, Utah. This event is brought to you by Temple Bound. If you don't know what Temple Bound is, you need to check it out. Their whole mission is to get people from remote areas to the temple that otherwise couldn't afford it or couldn't get there on their own. It is such an incredible mission. We are so excited to partner with them for this event. If you guys haven't got your tickets for the event, you need to get them ASAP. We'll probably be sold out within the next week or so. So hurry up, get your tickets. You don't want to miss out. It's going to be amazing. We have Jared Halverson coming, Terrell Gibbons. Some of our most loved podcast guests will be there. We're so excited. You need to be there. So get your tickets. Can't wait to see you. Okay, Melissa, I am so excited to have you on the podcast. The girls who read through all the story submissions have been wanting to have this recording done for a while. And so I'm super excited to hear your story today. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you, where you live, and just some background info before we get started?
Yeah, okay. I'm so excited to be on with you. So I'm originally from England. I was born and raised in Yorkshire, and I moved to Vancouver, Canada. That's where I currently am now with my family. When I was 16, my dad served his mission in Toronto and always loved Canada. And so, yeah, we made the move when I was 16. Mother of 4 children, married to my English husband, grew up with him in England. Our families were friends. He was my childhood crush. We kind of did the long distance thing, and he ended up moving out here and we got married. So
Awesome. Well, that is so fun. So do you tell us a little bit about like what do you do for fun? What are your hobbies? Like give us some background about you and
too many hobbies. So I am a photographer. I've been doing that for a few years. But when I had my 4th baby, I kind of felt this like prompting or this like pull to just, like calm down with that a little bit. And so I did. And then I opened up like an online shop, like a vintage. It's kind of blended with like scripture verses. So that's kind of what I'm doing mostly right now.
Okay, awesome. Well, let's jump into your story.
Okay, so I guess I'll start back. My story, I was kind of hesitant to be like, oh, this is a comeback story because it starts when I was so young. But it is a comeback story. I was around, well, just being younger, growing up in England, the culture is very just around the topic of faith. It's not the same as North America in the sense that people are very open and enthusiastic about their faith and beliefs. And so it was quite the opposite. So growing up, it was, we're this family that is very religious. We go to church every Sunday, and I always felt like I didn't fit in and was embarrassed and ashamed. And so I just always felt different, and I really struggled with that from a very young age. I remember just wishing that my parents would be the parents that would go to the pub on an evening, because all my friends' parents were there and they were hanging out in the evenings. And that's like a big part of British culture, is like pub culture, and drinking is like very much a part of just historical culture. Is just like the hangout place where you would go. So growing up, that was kind of a struggle for me. But at the same time, like, I loved my family. I loved the gospel. It was just like such a safe place with my family and at church. And I just felt it, like it felt right. But I obviously had this pull with my peers. And so as I got a bit older, like preteen, I was kind of being pulled more that way, trying to fit in. I wouldn't say I was like this wild child, but definitely was leaning more that way of my peers, like my behavior and the way that I spoke, my language. And it really affected my relationship with my parents and my family, and kind of turned into this child. I didn't even really like who I was. I wasn't feeling happy. But then there was a turning point. My dad was the bishop of our branch. And obviously, like when missionaries come in the ward, we get close to them. And so then we would go visit them in Utah, which was always so fun. But we went this one time, I think I must have been 13 or coming up to 14 at this point. And we met all these friends through these connections with missionaries. And I went to EFY for the first time. And just being around these people like my age that openly spoke about God and would have conversations with me about it so willingly and openly, it really opened my eyes to like considering, it can be cool, and you can like love God and Jesus and talk about these things. And so it was really new to me, and it felt really good. And so I could kind of like, as we were on these vacations, I could feel this like change happening. Around that time, it was General Conference, and it was when, if you remember, it was when President Hinckley gave the whole church a challenge to read the Book of Mormon before the end of the year. And I guess I just kind of warmed up to this idea, but I surprised myself by like, okay, I can read the Book of Mormon every day. And I wasn't really reading much. It was like a verse or two. And I don't think I was really like understanding what I was reading, but just the act of like opening my Book of Mormon and inviting the Spirit, it was this kind of gradual change, like that began to change me. And I was just more pleasant to be around at home, and my relationship with my family changed. And when it was time to go back to school after summer, I was just a totally different person by that point. And it was funny because my teachers noticed the difference. I had more respect for my teachers and took schoolwork more seriously. It literally affected every aspect of my life. Every parent-teacher conference after that, my teacher would be like, every time I saw my parents, he was like, I still cannot believe the change, Melissa, that year. So it was also kind of a tricky transition as well with my friends. Coming back, this new person who, I kind of had to like fill them in, like, okay, I'm not going to be speaking this way and doing these things and that we used to do. And I just can't believe how amazing my friends were, because they stopped swearing around me. They really respected it. I even had a friend that ended up joining the church and got baptized just from seeing the change in me. So I think about it a lot, like how lucky I was to have those friends that really, I feel like they were just put in my circle for a reason. I'll never forget one of them as well, because clubbing culture is huge in England. It's like pretty young, you start to go clubbing at nightclubs and drinking. And it was around that time when it was like, oh, the girls are going to start doing that. And I remember thinking, oh, they're not really doing it. And my one friend just said to me one time that, oh, I'd rather be hanging out with you than going to the clubs anyway. So it was so special. I was so grateful that I was in that group of girls. So at this point, I'd kind of made this big life change. I was really happy. My family relationships were doing a lot better, and I got a patriarchal blessing, which was amazing. My granddad was the patriarch, and it had all these amazing things in it, but there was also some things in there that kind of scared me. Didn't think too much of it at the moment, but it did worry me. It basically was saying there's going to be whirlwinds in your life, and give me some instruction on what I needed to do to prepare for those things. And so that was kind of always in the back of my mind. But then around this point where I was at this crossroads where I'd kind of veered back, being more present in church and like having a testimony and consciously choosing that. There was a stake conference coming up, and I was 14 at the time. So I had no reason to have this thought, but I got this thought just came in my head the day before stake conference. It was like, do you have a talk tomorrow? And I just kind of like laughed it off, like that was weird. And then totally forgot about it. And the next morning I was getting ready, doing my hair. And as I'm doing my hair, this like really urgent, panicky feeling came, the same prompting, like you have a talk that you haven't prepared. And it freaked me out. I'd never felt anything like this before. So I was like, maybe I need to listen to this. So I got on my knees, said a prayer, opened my scriptures, and it opened to Helaman 5:12. And so I read through it, and it talks about the whirlwinds and building our foundation upon Christ. So I thought, oh, okay, well, this is a good verse. I can talk about this if I, need to. But honestly, I didn't believe that that was actually going to happen. It was more because the feeling that accompanied it that pushed me to do that. So we get to state conference that morning. We were late. I'm one of 5 kids. So it's like, we're traipsing in and going to it was like the very back of the stake center. We had to sit on the stage. And I completely forgot about these promptings that I'd had. And then about halfway through, the stake president gets up and calls me by name and asks me to come and share my testimony. I could not, I think my jaw was just like wide open. Like I couldn't actually believe it was happening. So I go up there and share this verse and shared how I'd had these promptings. Just like reflecting back now on how that was such like a pivotal time in my life. I was at this crossroads, and then the significance of that verse and what significance it would have in my life as well was really profound. But it was also just it felt like a gift, because I had this testimony that was just young and growing, but I hadn't had many experiences really with learning to recognize the Spirit. And it was also like a lesson to me that like God knows me personally, and he's speaking directly to me in a way that I couldn't deny it, because that was so specific and I didn't just make that up. And so I think that was like a huge learning moment in my life. I always come back to that moment in my life. Okay, so then we moved to Canada when I was 16. So this is a couple of years later. We get here, we don't know anyone, but the house that we bought was full of mattresses and food, and the ward had already they knew we were coming, they were ready for us. We had an invite to go to breakfast the next day. It was just like incredible. You think moving countries would be a really difficult thing to do, but it was so seamless and just like such a huge blessing you can transplant yourself anywhere in the world and it's the exact same. Like the structure of the church, the organization of the church is there, and you have this built-in family that's going to look after you. And so that was a really good experience. So we've been here ever since. My husband moved over after his mission. We got married. We had our children. Life was really good. No complaints, like no real significant challenges or anything. And then COVID happened, and I feel like I went into kind of like a faith slump. I've always had this like really strong testimony, and I still did, but I wasn't keeping up with all of the little things as diligently, or maybe I was, but I wasn't my heart wasn't as in it as it always has been. And so I became a lot more negative, was dwelling on all these negative things that were in the news. We were very isolated because we weren't like here. There was a lot of restrictions. So we couldn't be as social as we used to be. And it was just like a really negative time in my life. It coincided with a lot of people I knew, like close family and friends leaving the church and talking about it online. So it was really difficult. At that point, it was just my sister and I out of 5 that were still going to church. I really did have a hard time with it. It was like, okay, I need to dig down. Like, what do I really believe? Is there something that I'm missing that I don't know that all these people suddenly know now? And so I had to dig. But it was around the time when I came across the Comeback podcast. And then also all of these others just start popping up out of nowhere. And it was just like all these good things I can listen to. And I think in particular yours, it was really helpful because I think I needed to see other people's faith stories that didn't look like mine. And that's okay. Like it's not going to be the same. And just like trusting that people have the capability to figure it out, and just give me this like new respect for agency that like we don't need to panic, and it can be this beautiful story that unfolds even though it's different. That was an amazing kind of turning point for me.
I have to just, you have no idea how much it means to me to hear that the Comeback podcast made a difference in your life and testimony, because there are so many people that put so much time into this podcast. Like, we have just this whole team like of people who are literally like working a full-time job, editing and doing operations and all this stuff, and they do it for free. They don't make one dime. None of us make any money, and it is all out of our like wanting to serve. And like, you saying that makes every single second that we've all put into this worth everything. And it's so special to hear that. And like, also in addition to that, I think the Comeback podcast, it provides a roadmap for people. Like, you are struggling with this situation, like, here is a story of somebody who's been through that same thing and how they found their way back. And it really, just like what you were saying, it provides this like full picture of how God really does work all things to the good of those who love him. Even a faith crisis, even addiction, even like all these different things. And so anyway, sorry to hijack for a second, but I just had to shout that out.
No, you're still right. I think people need to see themselves. They need like a reflection to relate to it. So my youngest brother, he came out as gay when I think he was like 14. He was pretty young. And he was kind of like in and out of the church a little bit. But just seeing my parents, how they had to wrestle with that and come to terms with it, but also how they had to navigate this relationship with their son, it's been amazing. And just like hearing other stories has been huge. They went on a trip to France when they were visiting family in England, and they went to this cathedral, and it had this reflection. There's so much symbolism in all like churches and architecture. And so one of the things was this reflection of this labyrinth on the floor. And the tour guide was explaining to them how part of the symbolism is that Christ is in the center, and it's this labyrinth, and everybody's got different paths on it. And there might be some paths might have little detours and go around different ways, but in the end, we all have our own journey to the center, and we just need to understand that and acknowledge that it's not all going to look the same, but there is a way through, right? So yeah, it's been incredible seeing that relationship with him, and just he's been an example too to me, because you hear this analogy of the shelf that like we stamp all these things on the shelf, these difficult things that we try to understand and come to terms with the gospel, but there's so many other things that are supporting that shelf that we don't just want to throw that out. It doesn't have to break if we look for the things that we do know and focus on them and nourish them, and that supports the shelf. That's kind of like, my brother's been an example of that to me, because we have this amazing relationship with him, and he still hangs on to all of the things that he does know, and it could be the same for us with anything that we're struggling with. And we kind of have this mentality kind of culturally in the church historically that it's like, you're either in or you're out, but I don't think
Yes.
that's true.
Yes. Can we like please normalize people coming to church, like no matter where they're at in their life? Like that is something that I have been thinking about so much lately. It's like, if one of my kids was making choices that were against the church, like I would want nothing more for them than to be just welcomed with open arms when they go to church, despite whatever choices they're making. And really, I think that most of the time the members do welcome people with open arms. And I mean, we see on social media and stuff, people being judgmental and whatever, but the vast majority of people, like my coming back to church as a drug addict, like I was welcomed with open arms, and I think that people have this thought in their head that if they go back to church, they're going to be judged. It's this black and white thing, when in reality, that is like so far from the truth. Like, come as you are, no matter where you're at on this line of progress. I've mentioned, I really need to figure out where I heard this quote from, but it's not about where you are on the path, it's about what way you're facing.
Yeah.
And like, it is not black and white. It is golden. Anyway, sorry, I'm like on one today, so I'm just
No,
like
I love
going.
it. I love it. No, so I guess, yeah, coming back to the story. So that was like the COVID kind of struggle, the slump. And then that was, finding your podcast and finding other people like converts who are sharing the stories. It just like really boosted me and got me back into just digging into my testimony again, and like learning like this new hunger for like deeper learning from the scriptures. And I feel like collectively as a church, we've just started to do that. It's like, we have this amazing scripture in front of us, and we've really not been like digging much into it. We just, brush over the same verses that we've heard, but we're not like looking deep enough. And so that's been amazing. And again, I was back on a high. Life was really good. I was so happy and had our family until last year, April, the morning of April 11, when our 9-year-old daughter unexpectedly passed away. My God. She was happy, healthy the night before, running around the neighborhood with the neighborhood kids as always. They were in and out. She was so happy that last night. And I went to Young Women's, and I remember pulling out of the driveway and just looking back. And I said to Tom, usually like 7 o'clock, I'm like, like get him to bed, like I'm going. But I just said to him, just let him stay up a bit longer. And I remember pulling out and seeing her with her friends all at the front, and they were playing games. She had this $20 bill. She was trying to get them to win it. She was always trying to give things away. And I just remember being so happy, like, they're so happy. I love this. And it was in the middle of the night, she woke up with a stomach ache as she came in our bed, and then she started to throw up. She threw up a few times, but it was kind of like, we have done this 100 times before, stomach bug. And by the morning, she was still next to me in the bed, but I got up quietly thinking she'd need some rest still, and start to get the other kids ready for school. And then my husband started shouting me up, and I knew as soon as I saw her, I knew she was gone. And so kind of like living the gospel up to that point was kind of like, it feels like this practice, like theory test for like a road test, and then it was like I was just thrown onto the road, like, okay, this is it now, like this is the real test. And I just remember that morning being so surreal, like out of body experience. I called 911. I ran outside. That was my instinct, just like get help. And so it was school, everyone was walking to school in the neighborhood. My neighbor came, she's a nurse, started CPR, and the whole time I'm just thinking, I believe in miracles. Like, it was 4 days after a conference, and there was a talk called Angels, Priesthood. I can't remember the full. It was basically miracles, angels, and priesthood. And he talked about people being brought back to life and these amazing miracles. And I remember thinking, like, that was so clear in my mind. I know that she can come back. They can do this. And we asked everybody around the world, all of our friends and family, to pray and that we believe that she can come back. But I knew, like, I had this knowing from the spirit that she was gone. And so it felt like the roof was just ripped open in that emergency room. It just literally felt like it was a full room full of angels. And so even though it's really hard to explain, it was this awful, terrifying experience. There was also this presence of peace and comfort at the same time. And so the days after that were we just shell shocked. You're driving home from the hospital without your child. You're like, is this real? Like, how is this real? And so we didn't know what to do. We were just sat around together, and the people just started coming. Like, everybody showed up. And it's, in my mind, I didn't really know what I wanted, but as soon as they started coming, I knew that's what I needed. I needed people. And I just was in awe of these members that must have followed the spirit, because I was thinking, if I was on the other side, I would be second guessing everything. I'd be dropping something off and leaving and giving them space. And I just had this vision of them coming through that door and coming in my house and getting to work and like bringing food and just sitting with us and being with us. And this happened for weeks. I think the neighbors must have thought there was like a party going on, because it was just like open door, house full of people. And so that was an incredible experience. And it was like truly an example of ministering and just mourning with those who mourn. And so we also had a couple of friends of mine that immediately just had this thought that we need to do like a sensitivity training at church. And our state president lost a baby years ago. So he and his wife came and did this whole fifth Sunday on what to say, what not to say, like what they're going to need. And it was the most amazing thing. So we had all this support from members, and it kind of feels like the only way to describe it would be like the spiritual morphine that you just feel, that you have this like strength. And then it kind of starts to wear off a little bit after a while. That was kind of my experience. There was also a point where, even though I have this really strong testimony and I have been blessed with that for so many years, again, like that moment I had during COVID where I had to like dig down to what I really know, that happened again. But this time it was like this like scary thought. It felt so real. Like, I know it's true, but like, what if? Like, what if that's it? Like, what if I'm not going to see her again? And this is all just not real. Have I made this up? And it's like, as soon as I said that to myself, my mind just went to all of these things. And as kind of time went on and we reflected, there was all of these tender mercies that we realized coming up to that day. Like, for example, I'll just share a couple of them. So that week, a few days before, I needed to go to the grocery store to get food for lunches for the next day. And it was already like 8, so it's like bedtime for the kids. But for some reason I said to them like, oh, do you wanna come to save on with me to the grocery store? And they were like, oh, yeah. And Abby, it just had been a birthday a few weeks before. So she had all this birthday money that she never really spent. She was just good at saving it. But she said, I want to buy everybody something. But my oldest had been a little bit cheeky and had kind of said, okay, you can stay here, because there'd been a bit of attitude problems. And so she was all upset, and I was taking just two of them with me, Abby and my son, Harry. And she's crying at the door, you know, like as we're pulling out. And I closed the garage door as we pull out, and this powerful like feeling that I just had to go back came. And I just remember rolling my eyes like, oh, okay, fine. And so I pulled back in, and I told Abby to go get her sister. And she went and got her, and she came with us. And at the back of the grocery store, there's just this little section of like toys, random like squishmallows and Lego and like things like that. So I just kind of let them hang out there and have a look while I did my grocery shopping. And so she had this birthday money, and she was asking Harry what he wanted, and he picked this big squishmallow, and then she picked up this other little monkey that goes around your neck for my youngest, Molly. And so when we got back, she went into her room. She was in a crib and gave it to her. And obviously Molly was just so happy and loved it. And I was in my bedroom, like doing something, getting ready for bed and everything. And she came up to me and squeezed my arm really tight. And she just had this big smile. And she's like, Mom, I'm so happy. And I was like, oh, why? She said, because she's happy. And it was, those words just stay with me now, because just knowing that she felt so happy when we're happy. And there was also the night that it happened, my oldest, Lily, she would never sleep at my parents' house. They live about 45 minutes away. But my mum randomly texted me while I was at New Women's, like, does Lily want to sleep over? And my brother from London, my youngest brother, Ruben, was visiting. He just got here like a couple of days before. So he'd been to see Abby, and because he was there, she was like, oh yeah, I'll come for a sleepover. So this was so random. I drove her out at like 9 o'clock. And on the way there was construction. So we were chatting, and out of nowhere, she just said, Mom, what does it feel like to die? And I was kind of like taken back, like, oh. And then I realized I'd just watched the Follow Him podcast, where they told a story about President Nelson. His dad or his granddad had a dream about, I think it was his dad that died. And he asked him in this dream, what's it like to die? And he said, it's just as natural as being born into this life. And so I was able to tell her that, and I told her that. And so I was like, oh, I've had an answer for that. I felt really good about myself. When I realized that, I just couldn't believe that she asked me that night. And just in hindsight, the fact that she went, I think, was best for her for that next morning. And so there was all of these just like traces of like God working in the background leading up to that day. And so we started to see all of these things, right? But then it continued. It was like an outpouring of tender mercies, of things that just felt too, like, it was undeniable. Like, for example, we went down to conference that October, and we decided after conference on the Monday we would go down, you know, show the kids Temple Square and go to the conference center. But we decided, for some reason, we just walked straight up to the church office building. There was no one really there except this family that had traveled from somewhere, and Elder Kieran was just there with them. And so we walked right up, and he's just right there. And he asked, like, they needed a picture. So I took a picture, and then he started talking to us. We had all these like connections because he's from England. And so it's like a very small world in the church. So we had these connections. We knew some of the same people. And then we shared about Abby. And I didn't realize this, but he actually lost a child as well, like a baby. And so we were just on this high, like, that we ran into an apostle, and we didn't really know what to do with ourselves. Like, he spent quite a bit of time with us and gave us his card so we could email him and share more. And we just felt so loved by him. And so, like, I'm sure he was busy and had things to do, but he took that time with us and gave us hugs. And we were like, okay, well, what do we do next? And so we just start walking into the church office building. And as we go to open the door, out comes Elder Stevenson and his wife just right there. And we're like, oh, okay. there's another apostle. And so we spoke to them and they were so sweet. And his wife was so sweet and was talking to Lily about serving a mission. And we got a picture with them. And it was just like God knew I'd be like, oh, that was a coincidence. But it was like very clear that God is showing us that he's there. And it was a really impactful thing for our children to see these things too, and to just like feel like God knows them and cares about them. And there's just been other things too, where just like coincidences that have happened and other little miracles in family members' lives. The other thing that has been another testimony to me has been through people I don't know. So on social media, with this art shop that I started, it started to pick up just before, like the Easter before. And so I kept getting this prompting to share more about my faith, but I was really scared because I live in a place where it's like Bible Belt of Canada. I had a bad experience going to a Christian school here where they found out what specific religion I was and basically kicked me out. And so I didn't really like bringing it up with people necessarily that I worked with or like, friends at school or whatever. And so I kept getting this push though, like I need to share more specifically about my faith on this account. And so I started to do that. And then obviously everything that happened, Abby, it kind of turned into this. I just was sharing my faith even more and sharing our experiences. I met so many people, like so many angel moms that messaged me and still do to this day. And so that's been a huge blessing. But I've had some interesting experiences where people have answered prayers that have messaged me. And I'm like, how would they have known that? And I had this one in particular in February or March of this year where I was having a really rough time. It just comes in waves where it's just grief is like that. And we were on vacation where we'd just been with Abby the year before. And so it was particularly hard. And I was really upset. And one thing that was kind of interesting was I couldn't have a dream about her and I really wanted to just see her again, And so I remember praying and being like, why can't I just have a dream about her and like see her like that? And then the next morning I get a message from someone I don't know. And it was just like, hey, Melissa, I'm so sorry. Like I should have told you this a month ago, but I had this dream about Abby. And immediately I'm like, oh, I need to know. Like, and she's like, I felt so weird about it because like she didn't really even know if the name was Abby, but in the dream it was Abby. She's like, I've been following you, but not that closely. And I had to check. And she's like, but I knew in the dream her name was Abby. But she had this dream about our family and the things that happened in the dream were so specific. And it was like specific answers to questions that I'd had and that I'd been struggling with. And so I just couldn't believe it. I was so taken back that this stranger had this dream and the timing of it too. It was like, how could she have known that? So it's just incredible how God works. You see these patterns of like, he could have given me a dream, but how much more impact does it have when it comes from somebody that doesn't know me? And he's even more trying to tell me that he's aware of me and that he cares. So yeah, it's just been so many experiences like that where it's like, we didn't get that miracle that we really desperately pleaded for. But I feel like I have this stronger testimony of miracles than I ever have, even though it wasn't the one that I wanted. And so I don't know the answers of why she didn't get to live the rest of her life and why she isn't here with us and why am I still here? It's like such a strange backward feeling that you have a child that's no longer here. But then I feel like this is still her story because she's impacting people as well. And she's still a part of it. It's still her story. And so that really motivates me to share the gospel and to share our experience. And then when you get those messages, there's obviously like messages, you know this very well, like when you're openly sharing your faith, you just get some brutal DMs. And
You get some brutal DMs.
yeah, and it's just, people don't really say that in real life, but online it's like where they hang out. And so you're going to get
Yeah.
the worst possible comments that you can imagine. And so it's rough sometimes, but the ones that you get where you're like, I haven't felt the spirit in a long time, but after watching this, like, I felt something. Like, it's just, there's not really many better feelings than that when somebody is turning to Christ and like coming closer to God, right? So,
Wow. That is so incredible. So tell me, what advice would you have for somebody that has just lost a loved one close to them?
for them specifically, I think, so this is interesting because I took a Greek course because I'm very like, I just want to know everything that I need to know. And so that's kind of how I handled it. The way I handled my grief wasn't like staying in bed. And I totally could have done that. But for me, it was, I needed to dig into the gospel. It was like my lifeline and learn as much as I can. The feeling of the spirit is like what I craved. Like I needed to feel uplifted. But at the same time, like you have to feel the grief. And Christ was a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And so the Christ-like attribute to mourn with those that mourn and to be acquainted with grief. And so I've learned a lot about grief from an educational standpoint, and kind of blending that with my understanding of the gospel is kind of what I'm trying to do. And I don't think there is a real right way. I think generally as like Christians in general, we can sometimes be like, oh, at least this, or she's in a better place, and all of these things that we like to say. We don't necessarily need to say those things. We can let people grieve because we have to grieve. It's not right to not grieve. It's kind of like with the gospel is what I learned from this course, even though it wasn't from a religious perspective. It was like, you can't take away from that person their journey of like how they're going to figure this out. Like you can't tell them what to do. Like a therapist isn't going to sit down with you and like, you're doing grief wrong and you need to do this and you'll feel better. It's like they have to discover that. They have to be able to have community and to talk about like, to just have people to talk to and to feel witnessed in their grief. That's a huge need for grievers, is to be witnessed. And I feel like we're so good at that in the church organization. Like everyone was just there and showed up. And so I feel like we are in a grief illiterate world where we just don't, it's not as common anymore. Like death used to be a big part of life where, you know, would die from diseases more often and prematurely. Like it's so much more taboo and unheard of for a child to die as it was like years ago, right? So people don't have that experience anymore and don't know how to navigate it. And so, yeah, my advice would just be that you're not doing it wrong, and just however you feel that you need to grieve is okay. And it doesn't mean that you have a lack of faith because you're sad, because it would be wrong to not feel sad. That's another big thing, that another miracle that happened was a mutual friend of mine. She's a convert and she lives here. And when it happened, she connected me with one of her friends that she met when she was at college in Hawaii, who had lost her boy a year and a half before. And I remember hearing about it. I didn't know her, I'd never met her, but through my friend, she told me. And it was the exact same, like the same time of day, the same symptoms. It was sepsis that didn't present with symptoms. And so, and it still is kind of a mystery. We don't really know how or why she got an infection without symptoms. And we're just told that sometimes it can spread like wildfire and just go from 0 to 100. And so there's been a bit of like awareness with that I've spoken about too. But with this friend, it was just the hugest blessing because to be connected with her, because she's a therapist down in Seattle and she was a year and a half ahead of me. And just having somebody who was like my mirror, like, again, like we want to see a reflection of ourselves and someone to relate to because it's so lonely, like in the trials that we have and in grief, it can be such a lonely place. And so that has been like huge for me. And then through our connections online, and we went to the BYU grief, like Life After Loss conference, and we just put out on our social media, like any angel moms want to get together while we're there. And you won't believe how many people messaged us. We had a few meet at our apartment that we were staying at. And one of the women was like, I've been looking for years to find a group of like other bereaved moms and can't find any. And so it's something that we feel really strongly about, that we need this community. There's lots of like grief communities, but not specifically for like our faith. So it's something that we've just started to do, is like bring these women together, and we're going to have like support groups monthly because we just need that connection. So that's another thing that is really helpful, to have others who understand as well, and that support that way.
I think also I see you giving purpose to your pain that you went through. It's like you went through this really, really hard thing, and now you're able to give purpose to it. And it's really incredible to see. How can people find your grief group or your grief support group? How can they find that?
So we have an Instagram page. We're just about ready to launch it. It will be a separate page to mine. It's called the Morning Light Collective. And so we'll be on Instagram, but the plan is to have like, it's going to be like grief education for the supporters, not just the grievers. So it will be how to support people and just acquainted with grief, basically, and not being afraid of it and overthinking it, and just giving them advice of how to help. And like with the sensitivity training, like that was such a lesson to me of like how we can do better at like dealing with it. And then like long-term, short-term needs, we're so good at the short-term needs with Relief Society. Like I had everything I needed. You know, we had family coming from England and we had all this food and toilet paper and just everything you could think of. But the long-term needs aren't really known and understood by anyone, not just like church members. It's like understanding what grief can look like. And I think people think as well, oh, she's really strong. Like she's got a good testimony. She's doing all right. It's kind of like, oh, like everything's good, but you know, it's not like that, right? Like I want to share the good things, but you really have to learn long suffering. And it's just this thing now that's a part of my life, and that grief is just with me. It's a companion, and it's like a roller coaster. And having that support from friends and family is huge. And it's interesting to me that it literally is a baptismal covenant. It's that important that we should be doing it, right? So just like empowering people to be like, you can do it. Even though you haven't experienced this, you can be a support for that person.
Wow, that is so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And thank you for being such a light to the world. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you too. Thank you so much for having me on.
Surf Clothing is one of our favorite brands. They have been supporting us since the very beginning. We love them so much. I think one of the things that I like about Surf so much is that my husband is literally obsessed, and I brought him in here to share his experience with Surf Clothing. So Jesse, tell us.
I love Surf Clothing. This is the best shirt that I've ever owned for church and professional purposes. It's got four-way stretch, which makes it really nice because not all the time I'm at my desk. Oftentimes I'm moving and out and about. So it's really nice to have a flexible shirt that moves with me. I know that it's got a mesh collar that I love. I think the purpose of that is really to prevent stains, but it's also super comfortable. It's way more comfortable around my neck. You know, if I'm at church or in business meetings with a tie, or whether I don't have a tie, it's really comfortable. It's got arm vents, which I love because I'm kind of a bigger fella. It helps me so that I can be a bit breathable, and I love it.
And also, you can get 15% off a shirt from Serve by using the code COMEBACK.
Hey guys, our event is just a couple weeks away. We are so excited. Wanted to tell you a little bit about our sponsors for the event. We could not do this event without our sponsors. It's a very big undertaking, and these sponsors make it possible, and we are so grateful for them. Our presenting sponsor is Temple Bound. Temple Bound's mission is to get people in remote areas to the temple. They're so awesome. Everyone involved in this organization is so inspired. It is so beautiful. Check them out. Our gold sponsor is Deseret First Credit Union. Deseret First is such an awesome organization as well. Did you know they have a fund for missionaries? It's incredible. Check it out. Our supporting sponsors are Latter-day Matchmaker, Matthew Braidley Pianos, Mike's Auto Shack. We also have 10 additional vendors at the event that are going to be selling goods and services. It's going to be awesome. Tickets are super limited. They're almost sold out. So if you're planning on coming, you want to get your tickets soon, you can go to comebackpodcast.org and you can buy tickets there. We're so excited to see you guys there. A lot of people have asked us how they can support the podcast, and we have created a Comeback Podcast merch line on our website, www.comebackpodcast.org. All of the money made from the merch goes right back into the podcast. So if you are interested in supporting the podcast and you want to purchase some merch, we would love it. Check it out. Thank you so much for being a supporter of the Comeback Podcast and listening to our episodes. It would mean so much to us if you would like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It helps other people be able to find us, and we want to share this message to everyone.